Today's guest grew up on a dairy farm in Wyoming, an overweight, slow-learning kid who no one had much faith in other than his parents and 8 older siblings. But he had the innate intelligence and strong work ethic to earn a teaching degree and, in one of the biggest upsets in sports history, capture the 2000 Olympic gold medal in Greco-Roman wrestling. I welcome a genuine American folk hero, Rulon Gardner. How are you, Rulon?
I'm doing very well. Life is good.
Yeah, life is good, and life has been interesting for a 36-year-old man. Not a lot that hasn't happened to you.
Not too much. You know, I've experienced, more than most people experience in 2 lifetimes. But, life is about learning from your experiences and growing and hopefully making changes that make sure you don't learn and make the same mistakes again.
In the opening, we talked about you being the youngest of 9 children. What was it like growing up in Afton, Wyoming? Afton's what, a couple of hundred people?
Well, the town is about a little less than 2,000 people. Huh. It's 1,500 people, and then the total community is around 5,000. So it's about an hour south of Jackson Hole, right in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. It's beautiful. It's got short summers and long winters. And being the youngest of 9 kids, I learned a lot of respect. I learned a lot of discipline. And we grew up on a 160-acre dairy farm, so we learned how to change pipe and feed cows, haul hay, do a lot of the things that had to be done, and I was called the gopher.
Wow. Are all of your brothers big like you?
My sisters are strong too. You hate to say that, but the brothers, we were all, at least right around 200 pounds or above, and so, my dad was, not a big man, not a large man, but, he had the physical size, and then the other brothers, there was one brother that's bigger than me, and he's, about 6'3", he's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger than me as I was growing up, and then through the years of the Olympics, I actually became stronger than him. So,
well, what with farming being the way it is now, the thought struck me that there are very few people in this country who had that type lifestyle growing up anymore.
It has changed a lot. You look at the corporate farms, you looked at, where we've come from the last 50 years from the family farm basically being dissolved because these corporate groups can come in and they hire, 50 to 100 workers to go out and do all the chores. And it used to be that the kids did it, and it was the parents' responsibility. And like my family, my dad and, mom came back to the farm because they wanted to teach the kids values. They wanted to teach them a discipline to go out there and accomplish goals. And every one of my brothers and sisters is college educated, cardiologists, teachers. There's 4 teachers in my family. I'm a teacher. We learn the respect of teaching and actually teaching a person to learn a skill and learn it well.
When was it that you first thought about competitive wrestling? I mean, you didn't even make your high school team, right?
Until
your senior year.
Yeah,
right.
I had a brother who was, 16 months older, and all the way through until my senior year, I was JV behind him. And at the end of my junior year, I started to be able to compete with him, and everybody said it was a mental game, but, I always respected and loved my brothers and sisters, and so I wasn't wanting to go out there and hurt them or, try to beat them too much, so I was respectful in that aspect. But then through the years, I found ways to control and kind of master my emotions, and then at the end of my senior year, I finally made the Olympic team. But for me as a youth wrestler, I started doing Pee-wee wrestling in 1st grade, and it was 4 days a year until I got into junior high, and then I had my brother who was always a little better than me. So I battled, and it wasn't about making, the varsity wrestling team winning state. It was about always improving, getting a little bit better every day, and learning how to get better and master your emotions, controlling those things that you couldn't accomplish. And maybe not today, but eventually, you'll make the team, and eventually you'll be the best.
That's the second time in that statement that you talked about mastering your emotions. That's a key thing for you, right?
It is. If you look at my past, I had a learning disability, right. And I had a lot of people out there who told me I'd never accomplish dreams and goals, and I'd never be anything.
A lot of criticism as a child, right? From
There
your
was.
Friends. And children can be vicious.
They can, and I was done, the last one done taking a test, and I'd get kids who would kind of make fun of me and laugh at me, but instead of, getting negative, I just found a positive way to keep working hard, keep positive, keep,
How'd you do that?
Just looking inside myself, and people would attack you. How do you do it? Do you pull inside yourself and quit, or do you just say, you know what? It doesn't matter what you say, but I'm going to get better one day at a time, and I'm going to master myself, and I'm going to move forward. It doesn't matter what people on the exterior say. It matters what I think and what I feel about myself. And if I'm happy with myself, that's all I can ever offer.
Pulling inside of himself and quitting is anything but what Rulon did. And we're going to talk about his remarkable upset of the Russian Alexander Karelin right after this. This is Rulon's book, Never Stop Pushing, and you've heard of David and Goliath, and of Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson, and the miracle on Icewell. Well, Rulon Gardner's shocking victory over undefeated Russian wrestler Alexander Karelin at the 2000 Olympics has been dubbed the miracle on the mat. That's well put, isn't it?
It is, for me.
You were 2,000 to 1 shot. 2,000 to 1 to win that.
Yeah.
And in 9 minutes, you won it.
I did. Our coaches said, Rulon, throw the past away, throw everything out there that you know about him away, and just go out and wrestle.
What did you know about him?
We knew he was 13 years undefeated. He had never lost an international match. He had won three of the previous Olympic Games. He had never lost. He hadn't been scored on in 10 years. And I lost to him in 1997, where he beat me 5-0. He threw me on my head and broke 2 vertebrae in that match and beat me, to win the World Championships in '97. So I knew how good he was. I knew how strong he was. If I went out there fearful, the match would be over before it started.
How big is a wrestling mat?
It's less than 20 feet, side to side. It's a circle, and then you have the chance to go out there, and you have to stay within the circle. They want to let you compete, and Greco-Roman wrestling is one of the 2 original Olympic sports. So it's been done for thousands of years. So I think of the past and me being able to represent the past, and then ultimately America. I took as a big responsibility.
I mean, when you were in the 7th grade, your team went 120-2 or something like that, and you lost the only 2 matches.
I did.
Tell that story.
We were in Soda Springs, Idaho. I was in 7th grade, and we went out and wrestled this dual meet tournament, and I lost 2 matches. And come to find out, that some of these wrestlers that weren't the better wrestlers, they'd even won. And on the way home, kids are teasing me, and they're just kind of making fun of me to let me know that I lost. And on the way home, I said, you know what? You lost the only 2 matches. Are you going to quit? I said, no. I said, it's not about winning. It's about learning. It's about finding a way to experience life and finding a way to improve yourself.
Have you ever experienced life? But on the way to doing that, you didn't even win the NCAA here in your own country.
No, I didn't. I ended up taking 4th place my senior year. I went to the University of Nebraska and ended up taking 4th place. I got done, and I started looking at the Olympics, and I said, my goal before becoming an Olympian, because I'd never really experienced international wrestling, and that's what the Olympics is. And I said, before that, I got to get my degree, and I went in and spent another 2 years, and I spent a total of 6.5 years to get my 4-year degree from Nebraska. And in 1996, I graduated with my degree, and then I put my sights on the Olympic Games.
Where'd your confidence come from? I mean, most of us in this country have never stayed in an Olympic village. I would imagine when you went to Sydney, you're in an Olympic village, and here you probably are wondering, what am I doing here? Or did that thought ever? Where'd you get your confidence?
It did affect me. First of all, my goal going through was making the Olympic team, and I accomplished that by beating Olympic silver medalist, world silver medalist McCarver on the Olympic trials, and beating Drumil Byers, who eventually became a world champion, who is actually on the Olympic team this year. And I beat them, so I knew I was somewhat skilled. And then a month before even the Olympics, I was in Russia, and I got thrown in 18 seconds because I got cocky, and the Russian threw me and pinned me, the number 2 Russian. And I went into Sydney and I threw everything out there that I knew about the sport, and I picked up the piece and I said, this is what I have to compete. I didn't go to Sydney and have fun. I went there to wrestle. I made a commitment to myself that I would walk out there, compete to the best of my ability, give 100%, and walk off with no regrets. And I expected myself to compete at that level, and I went out and I advanced all the way. In the semifinal match, I was losing 2-0. And Steve Frazier, our national team coach, '84 Olympic champion, said, Rulon, you can do it. And I came back from being down 2-0, and physically, I burned my opponent out. He physically, at the end of the match, he could not continue because his training, they, drink and party, and I've never drank alcohol. I've never drank, I've never smoked, never used drugs. I've never done those things, so I really focused on my conditioning. We used to wrestle 2-hour grind matches. So our confidence was built upon
grind matches.
They would grind you to nothing if you didn't have the mental, toughness and mental strength to continue. So they physically tried to tear you apart, and they wanted to make you like a diamond. They wanted to make you invincible. Nobody could beat you. Nobody could tear you down, no matter what we throw at you. So when you go to the Olympic Games, you've been through the worst. The Olympic Games is easy compared to what you've been through. So walking in there, I said, I know I'm good. How good? I don't know. Because people always said, what's your future? How good can you become? And I said, for me, it wasn't saying I was going to be good enough to beat one person. It was always I was good enough to be the best that I could be.
Strategically, you went into the mat with Rulon sweating.
Walking out there, I had Dan Chandler and Steve Frazier, our coaches, saying, Rulon, you can beat him. Rulon, you can do it. Rulon, and they're telling me all this stuff. I'm like, guys, please leave me alone. Because every day in practice, I prepared the same way. Mentally, physically, psychologically, I prepared for war. And I wasn't going to change the way because I was wrestling Rulon. I was going to wrestle that match like I'd wrestled every match in my life, even though it was the Olympic finals. I put myself under the same pressure every day.
But by sweating, my understanding, by sweating, he couldn't get a hold of you. Is that right?
True, but the problem with the Olympics is you go out there for a 2 or 3 minute presentation, you get introduced, you walk out there, and the whole time all you're thinking about is I'm not sweating. I'm not sweating because Rulon, physically, he could grab you, and the drier you are, the better grip he has. And physically, he was one of the strongest men in the world, and he physically could go out there and just throw you like nothing. And so when I was sitting there, I was trying to keep us sweating. I was trying to keep my body going. So when he grabbed me, it was like a greased pig at the state fair. It would be pretty
Which you
hard.
know something about, I would imagine.
Of course.
Rulon Gardner. Gardner is my guest. We'll be right back with Rulon right after this. I'm back with Rulon Gardner, who won the gold medal in 2000 and the bronze medal in 2004. But in between the adversity that you suffered through those 3 or 4 years, the snowmobiling accident, tell that story and how you got in a situation like that.
Well, in 2000, I won the Olympics. In 2001, I won the World Championships and became a world champ. And then 3 months after that, I was back in Wyoming with some of my friends. The Salt Lake Olympics had just started, so I was going back, and I was going to go to the Olympics and kind of enjoy the festivities. And I was up in Wyoming snowmobiling on February 14th, Valentine's Day, and we went up for a ride on top of the mountains. And I wanted to see the Tetons, and I got almost to the top, and I got stuck. And I came around, I told my friend, I'm going to try it one more time. And I got almost to the top, and I got stuck again. I came around, and I couldn't find my friend. And we're on top of the mountain, so I decided to look down on this gully thinking he was stuck down in there. And I got in there, it was too deep to come out, so I had to drop down in, and I got wet. And I ended up going about 7 miles in and out of the river until finally I left my snowmobile in about 2.5 feet of water and left it there. And that was about 7 o'clock at night. And I made it till 7 o'clock the next morning when airplane came in. He spotted me on the first pass and went out. He flew out, and then after he spotted me, he called the search and rescue and said, "We know where he's at. You got to come in. You got to find him." Life flight was called because the Olympics in Salt Lake had started. They couldn't let anybody leave. So for 3 extra hours, a total of 18 hours, I was stranded, and the temperature at 7 in the morning was 25 below zero. And I was wet, I was cold, and after 18 hours, they picked me up on the way to the hospital. My core temperature was 80 degrees, and when I got to the hospital, the doctor said, "Rulon, your feet are frozen solid." they'll be amputated at the ankle within the week. And they flew me to Idaho Falls, where I ended up getting all my treatment, and we ended up going through 4 surgeries, and I lost the middle toe on the right foot. And in June, I started to walk. In July, I started to wear shoes, and in August, I went back and started training. And then in September, Jamil Byers, my training partner, won the World Championships. And then in 2003, I came back after 8 months of training. I beat him to make the 2003 World Team, and then ultimately come back and make the 2004 Olympic team. And me and Jamil went to Athens together, and we won the bronze medal together. And then this year in 2008, he is the Olympian, and I'll be able to be there and hopefully help coach him and help him actually win his Olympic medal.
In Beijing?
Yes.
In Beijing. So you're going to actually be in the official role as a coach?
No, I'm the official broadcaster. So now I'm kind of the name and the face and the voice of wrestling now in America, and coming from a town of 1,500 people to being the voice of 1.5 million wrestlers in this great country. It's an amazing world.
But success, being successful, and being from a town of 1,500 people is not as easy as a lot of people think, right?
It doesn't, but I think in Wyoming, in the last 2 Olympics, we had 7 Olympians out of 450,000 people in the whole state.
Wow. Wow. There's another story about when you were riding your motorcycle and a car pulled out and you went into a tuck that you had learned from your wrestling days. Is that right?
Yeah. This is, actually, it's a week before the U.S. Nationals in 2004. A month before the Olympic trials, and I'm riding my motorcycle and coming to practice a week before nationals. Lady pulls out in front of me, and I thought about laying the bike down, but I decided to jump as I hit the car because I was going too fast to do anything else. And so I jumped at 30 miles an hour. I saw the ground coming at my head, and I did a duck roll. And as I did the duck roll, I did a front roll, and I came through, and I got road rash on my arm, but then my heel stopped me. And I stopped at 30 miles an hour, and I stood up. And there was actually a photographer there for the local paper, and he saw me going through the air, and he thought I was going to be dead or something. And I went back, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I got to get to practice. I got practice today. And so, it's experiences. And I came in, a week later, went to the Nationals, and then at that point, I actually dislocated my wrist right before the 2004 Olympic trials and had 3 pins in my wrist the month before the trials. So I hadn't even really trained for that 1 month before. And so when I went into the trials, everybody had written me off again. They're like, you'll never make the team. You had your dislocated wrist. And I went in there and I beat Jamil Byers, and people were just completely astonished because I did it. And the thing about it is last year in 2007, the Greco-Roman American wrestling team won the World Championship team title for the first time ever. And when Steve Frazier, our national team coach, got back, he said, Rulon, you were part of the reason why. I'm like, Steve, I haven't wrestled in 3 years. He said, the example you set for our wrestlers, that is something that you can't take away because of the discipline and all the things that you showed us when you were competing. We miss you in this room every day because you showed these athletes their potential.
Rulon Gardner's my guest, and we'll be back with more from Rulon right after this. Rulon Gardner is a man where pain has been his partner, and one of the spooky things in your book was about the doctor who delivered you telling your mother that you were going to be accident prone. Boy, was he ever right. Huh?
He did.
How spooky is that?
Well, he's he could see people the way they developed, and he was actually sitting there, and he's watching me walk down, and he's sitting there with my mother, and she was working with him. They were giving vaccinations, and I was in elementary, probably 1st or 2nd grade, and he looked down, and he sees this kid walking down the hallway, and he's like, I guarantee you, by the time this kid gets here, he'll trip and fall, just because the way he's walking. And as I was walking, I tripped and fell, and my mother, she saw me as I got closer, and she realized it was me. She says, you don't know how embarrassed I was to know that was my son. So,
You overcame an awful lot, didn't you? We talked about it earlier. Your slow reading, the process, the taunts from children and things like that. That obviously had to be a driving force in your life.
It was. It's just a motivator to improve yourself. Not listen to other people's limiting effects to allow yourself to evolve.
We have talked about what Rulon Gardner has done. What are you going to be doing?
Well, we just actually got back from Vienna, Austria last week, where we were there with People to People, and we had over 1,000 American athletes since 2004. They've actually had over 10,000 athletes there, kind of doing, it's like a pre-Olympics, and it's taken, you know, all the way from junior high kids all the way up through high school kids, and we take them over there for a sports festival, and they get to compete for, you know, a competition for other kids around the world come in, and it's kind of an ambassador program through sports to teach, you know, peace and love and compassion towards each other. So I got to do that last week in Vienna. That was an amazing opportunity. And then this next week we'll be in Chicago to see if we get the 2016 Olympic bid, and hopefully we can have the Olympics back here in America. It's been since 2002 since we had the Olympics in Salt Lake. So I think it's about time to let the American athletes compete here at home and hopefully let them bring the medal here back to America.
What are the chances for medals with this country in Beijing?
You know, for, you know, wrestling, we got a great team. We have some old veterans, but then we have some new guys that have never been on the Olympic team. I think the new guys, those are the scary ones for the foreigners because they've never seen them before. And when they walk in there, you know, if you can use that enthusiasm, that youth energy, you know, they have a great chance to win medals. I think overall, between Greco-Roman, freestyle wrestling, and women's wrestling, I'm hoping to bring back 10 to 15 medals as a country. And I get to do the broadcasting and kind of be the voice for wrestling.
Rulon, thank you very much, my friend. I've enjoyed everything. Rulon Gardner's been my guest. I'm Tim McCarver. Thanks for watching.